All right, let's talk about crypto. Now, you've probably heard the word Bitcoin floating around. You might have seen the price has been skyrocketing recently. You might have seen that Tesla has bought $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin and is going to start accepting it as payment. And you might have heard of all these weird things called Dogecoin, which are apparently going to the moon. As such, this video is my personal guide to the world of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. It's the introduction that I wish I would have had when I started investing in crypto about 4 years ago. And it's the video that I want to be able to send to my friends whenever they ask me, hey, are you investing in Bitcoin? Why are you investing in Bitcoin? How does it work? Is it safe? Are you going to lose your money? Isn't it illegal? All of this sort of stuff. So this video, which is for informational purposes only and should absolutely not be construed as financial advice in the slightest, we're going to split it up into 4 parts. Firstly, I'll talk about what Bitcoin is and how cryptocurrencies in general work and why they work and why they're legit. Secondly, we'll talk about why Bitcoin and crypto is so controversial and I'll share my hot takes about that. Thirdly, we'll talk about why I personally do invest in Bitcoin and crypto and I will share my portfolio allocation and the reasons behind that. And fourthly, we'll talk about how you can get started investing in crypto if that's the sort of thing you want to do, with lots and lots of caveats and cautionary tales along the way. As always, timestamps in the video description so you can jump around if you feel like it. And if you're new to the channel, hello, nice to meet you. My name is Ali. I'm a doctor based in Cambridge in the UK. And on this channel, we normally explore the tools and strategies that help us live healthier, happier, more productive lives. But I have a personal penchant for the topic of money, and I think more people should learn about money and investing and finance and how it works and be open about that sort of stuff. So here we are talking about this video. Anyway, let's get into section number 1. All right, so let's take things back to basics to try and build up our understanding of Bitcoin from the ground up. Now, Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency. There are hundreds of other cryptocurrencies out there, but Bitcoin is like the original, the OG, and it's by far the biggest cryptocurrency around, which begs the question, what is a cryptocurrency? So here's my definition of a cryptocurrency based on 4 central concepts. A cryptocurrency is a virtual currency based on a ledger, which is decentralized and secured by cryptography. All right, so firstly, Bitcoin is a virtual currency. Now, what is a currency? Well, a currency is just a medium of exchange. It's what replaces the old school bartering system we used to have when it would be like, I will give you this bushel of wheat in return for the shoe that you have kindly made me because you are a, I don't know, leather worker. Obviously, that system of bartering is quite inefficient because you have to store lots of stuff that other people want, and that's just a bit of a pain. And so we invented currency in the form of coins, usually as a system that everyone recognized to be able to exchange stuff without having the physical goods. So I could sell my bushel of wheat for 2 copper coins, and then I could save up my copper coins and I could buy your shoes for 10 copper coins, for example. Back in the day, currency itself was tied to metals like gold and silver and copper, which had like different values. And so the actual metal of the coins was worth something because everyone agreed that these metals were somewhat precious. But in modern times, most of our currency takes the form of paper notes, and paper notes aren't inherently worth anything because the paper is just worth paper. But currency is worth something because everyone agrees that it's worth something. If I take $100 almost anywhere in the world, most people in most places in the world will recognize that $100 is worth $100 and I'd be able to buy $100 worth of stuff from it. If hypothetically the whole world were to tomorrow decide that the US dollar is a meaningless currency and they're not going to accept it for anything at all, then the US dollar would be worthless. So really, when it comes to currency, it doesn't mean anything real. Currency is kind of just an abstract way that we've all agreed to value things in a certain way. So coming back to Bitcoin, Bitcoin is virtual currency. It is a digital form of currency, i.e. a digital form of paying for goods and services and exchanging money over the internet. Way back in 2009, when Bitcoin was first invented, most people didn't believe that it would be a viable form of currency. But over the last decade plus, as Bitcoin has become more and more popular, people are starting to say that maybe Bitcoin could be the currency of the future. Maybe in the future, maybe a few years, few decades from now, we'll be paying for goods and services using Bitcoin over the internet rather than by using these old school, old-fashioned centralized banking and government institutions to exchange US dollars and our actual local currencies. Okay, so that was the currency part of it. We can think of Bitcoin or crypto as like internet money or like virtual money or virtual currency. Let's now talk about the ledger system that holds it all together. And the thing to understand here is that Bitcoin is effectively one giant, huge spreadsheet. This spreadsheet is called a ledger, and in the spreadsheet, we've got a record of every single Bitcoin transaction that has ever happened since January 2009 when Bitcoin was first invented. And the way that I think of it in my head is like, let's say you're going on holiday with a group of friends, and you don't want to kind of keep on splitting the bill and handing over cash because that's a total nightmare. Therefore, someone makes a spreadsheet to keep track of who owes what. And so line 1 in the spreadsheet might be Ali owes Sheen £12. Line 2 might be Jake owes Molly £18. And the idea is that as our holiday goes on, we would keep on adding stuff to our spreadsheet or our ledger, and at the end of the holiday, we would all settle up and then actual money would exchange hands. Now, assuming you trust your friends to be honest, this spreadsheet actually works reasonably well. You can basically treat this whole spreadsheet as virtual money. I am giving my friend virtual £10 in exchange for them paying for dinner. Other friend is giving me virtual £20 in exchange for me paying for the boat ride. Now, that's fine for a group of a few people on holiday, but imagine hypothetically if the whole world were to run on a similar spreadsheet, where instead of money ever exchanging hands like physically, it would just be a line item in the spreadsheet. Now imagine a world in which everyone trusted the spreadsheet and everyone was being honest and good and nice and friendly and only adding legitimate things to the spreadsheet that everyone agreed on. That's basically what Bitcoin is. It's this giant spreadsheet that keeps track of absolutely every single transaction that's ever happened regarding Bitcoin since the start of Bitcoin. And so that means that this spreadsheet has a record of everyone in the world who has ever bought and sold Bitcoin, and it tells you how much Bitcoin they've bought and sold, so you can work out how much Bitcoin each person has in their account. Now, let's say I have 2 Bitcoins in my account, which is quite a lot of money these days, and I were to give 1 Bitcoin to a friend. We could add to this spreadsheet, Ali gives 1 Bitcoin to Jake. And because it's all in one spreadsheet, the spreadsheet knows that my Bitcoin account has now 1 Bitcoin and Jake's Bitcoin account now has 1 Bitcoin in it as well. Now, fundamentally, this is all Bitcoin really is. It's just a giant ass spreadsheet, but it's got some other fancy features that make it really, really clever and that make it a potential candidate for the currency of the future. See, the problem with our ledger system is that if it's on a spreadsheet, usually it's one person who's maintaining the spreadsheet. So let's say I'm on holiday with friends and everyone trusts me to do this, to be the spreadsheet guy because I'm a massive nerd. And therefore, anytime they want to post a transaction, they would say, hey, Ali, Catherine has given Lucia £10. And therefore I will add it to the spreadsheet. This is fine because my friends trust me and I'm a massive nerd, but we don't want an entire system of financial stuff based on this centralized model, because that's kind of what we have already. Like every bank, financial institution, government in the world is some sort of centralized authority that handles money. And so the US dollar is tied to the Federal Reserve and the US government. The UK pound is tied to the Bank of England, and then it's all somewhat related to like the International Monetary Fund, and then like the government has something to do with it. But essentially it's a small group of actors like governments and banks that manage the financial system for basically every country in the world. And so the third part of our definition of a cryptocurrency is that it needs to be decentralized. And the way that Bitcoin and all these other cryptocurrencies work is that there is no central person in charge of them. There is no one person or one company saying, hey, I have got the master spreadsheet. Instead, what happens is that every single person in the world can have a copy of that master spreadsheet if they want. And so with Bitcoin, for example, there are millions of people around the world on their computers who each have a copy of the master spreadsheet. And each of those computers are running software that's constantly checking to make sure that master spreadsheet is legit and it's the same as every other copy of the master spreadsheet on the network. And that means that if you want to hack Bitcoin, it's quite hard to do because there's like millions of people all around the world who are helping to maintain it. And it means that if you want to unduly influence stuff, like if you're a bank or a government or some other evil person, it's quite hard to do because again, it's decentralized. It means that it's being maintained and managed by millions of people all around the world from their computers. And now we get to the final part of our definition, which is that this whole system is built and secured using cryptography. So cryptography is a branch of maths and computer science that's associated with like code making and code breaking. And cryptography is how all of our communications are encrypted. So for example, when you send a WhatsApp message, there is no way that WhatsApp or Facebook can read the message because it's encrypted by cryptography on either end. And so only the sender and the recipient can see what the message is. No one in the middle can see what the message is. It's become encrypted. It's just like a bunch of numbers that no one can interpret. And the really clever thing about Bitcoin and these other cryptocurrencies is that they use cryptography to solve the problem of trust and to solve the problem of centralization. The problem of trust is that, you know, when I'm on holiday with my friends, we all trust each other and we know that no one's going to screw anyone over, but in real life, that doesn't necessarily happen. So your system needs to be secure enough so as not to rely on trusting individuals. And secondly, the problem of centralization, i.e. it can't just be Google owning a Google Sheet that everyone gets a copy of because Google controls it. It can't just be Amazon. It can't be the US government. It can't be the Bank of England. It needs to be truly decentralized in a way that everyone maintains and manages the system. All right, now it's time for a little basic introduction to the world of cryptography. This is a little bit complicated. If you don't want to hear it, you can skip to this timestamp down below and that will take you to the next section. But essentially, cryptography is really, really cool. And I am just now kind of dabbling in the world of cryptography and trying to understand it. So here are a few concepts and how I've kind of explained it to myself in my head. Essentially, cryptography is based around the use of one-way functions called hash functions. And the idea behind there is that you can put any message or anything through a hash function, and it will spit out a totally random combination of letters and numbers on the other end in such a way that you can't then reverse the function. And so if we were to take my name and put it through a hash function called SHA-256, which is the one that Bitcoin uses, but explaining it is a bit too hard, we'll come out with this random string of letters and numbers. And now if you were to just look at that random string of letters and numbers, there is no way you can reverse the chain to go back to what the original message was. Now, Bitcoin uses these hash functions to solve both those problems. It solves the problem of trust by using digital signatures based around secret keys and public keys in this thing called public key cryptography. And essentially it means that you as an individual can have a secret key, a password that no one else knows, but then you have a public key, which is sort of related to your password, which other people do know, but that's fine because they can never find out your true password. And as long as you use your true password to sign your messages, it's 100%, basically 100% guaranteed that those messages are legit. So that kind of solves the trust problem. And we solve the decentralization problem by using this concept called proof of work, where all of the different people on the network, on the Bitcoin network, who are maintaining the system are called Bitcoin miners. And what these guys try and do is they essentially try and solve a hash puzzle, which just requires lots and lots and lots of computing power, effectively involves guessing multiple numbers multiple times. And this is a sort of lottery between everyone on the network, so that if you are the lucky person who's plucked the random number out of thin air that solves the hash puzzle, then your spreadsheet kind of gets saved, and then that save state is permanent, and then you get rewarded with some Bitcoin for giving up your computing power to help kind of maintain the whole thing. And I'm using a lot of jargon, and this is actually very hard to break down in like an easy way. There are two sources I'd recommend, and I would recommend these if you are actually interested in learning how cryptography works. Firstly is a video from one of my favorite YouTube channels, 3 Blue 1 Brown, called But How Does Bitcoin Work?, where he explains the basics of hash functions and cryptography and like SHA-256 and this sort of stuff. And secondly is actually an online course from Brilliant, who are very kindly sponsoring this video. Now bear with me here. So Brilliant is an online platform for courses in math science and computer science. And their most recent course is all about cryptocurrencies and cryptography, and it's got like tons of different bits in it that really help you understand crypto from the ground up. And I've been working through this course on Brilliant for the last few weeks, and it's really helped improve my own understanding of crypto. And in fact, when preparing for this video, I was just like redoing that course because it's just so good, and it like really nails it down from first principles to explain how Bitcoin works. And the way they do it is they sort of create Bitcoin from the ground up and kind of explain all of the maths behind it in a way that's interactive and engaging and fun. So if this stuff seems interesting to you, if you want to understand how public key cryptography works, secret keys, private keys, decentralization, hash functions, Merkle nodes, this sort of cool stuff, you should definitely check out that course over at Brilliant. If you're one of the first 200 people to hit the link in the video description or head over to brilliant.org/Ali, then you will get 20% of the annual premium subscription. And along with that, you'll get access to all their other courses on math science and computer science as well. I particularly like their course on Python fundamentals and advanced Python. Python is the world's most popular programming language. So that's all I'm going to say about the cryptography part of like what are cryptocurrencies. Definitely check out the course on Brilliant if you want to learn more about it. Let's now move on to topic number 2. Why is Bitcoin and crypto so controversial? So there's broadly 4 reasons as to why Bitcoin is controversial. Number 1, the speculation bubble. Number 2, the environmental impact. Number 3, security issues. And number 4, the threat of illegal activity. Firstly, a lot of people say that Bitcoin is a speculative bubble. The price of Bitcoin is not based, people say, on any intrinsic value behind Bitcoin. It is in fact based on people like you and me thinking, oh my God, Bitcoin's a big deal, therefore we buy it, and therefore supply and demand means that the price goes up. People have been saying this since like 2011, when the price of Bitcoin was absolutely nothing compared to the $50,000 that it is now. And yes, there is an extent to which Bitcoin is a speculative bubble. And in fact, when I invest in Bitcoin, I don't really think of it as investing. I do in fact think of it as gambling, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about later. And people would say that, for example, when Elon Musk tweets that he's about to buy Bitcoin, suddenly the price soars really high. That is not the sign of how a market would respond to an underlying value increase. It is in fact how the market would respond to speculation. Elon Musk is buying Bitcoin, therefore everyone in the world is like, oh my God, Elon Musk is buying Bitcoin, therefore they buy Bitcoin, therefore the price goes up. It's not like Bitcoin has fundamentally changed because of Elon Musk's tweet. It's just that people are speculating at it, which is why it's this sort of speculative bubble. Secondly, Bitcoin is controversial because of the energy consumption and alleged environmental impact of the technology. So because it is kind of decentralized and run by zillions of computers, zillions of nodes all around the world, people would say that those nodes use lots and lots of energy, use lots of computing power, therefore lots of electricity, in order to solve the hash puzzles that the whole Bitcoin system is based around. Now, the anti-Bitcoin people would say that this use of energy is not very good because it's bad for the environment and it's causing carbon to go into the atmosphere, etc., just to maintain a system. Whereas the pro-Bitcoin people would say, yeah, that's true, but like we need to use energy to maintain any system, and the actual banking industry uses far more energy than Bitcoin does or will in the near future. And they would say that these kind of Bitcoin mining farms are in countries like Iceland and Greenland, where it's very cold and where there's very like lots of cold air, and therefore the cooling of it becomes more efficient. And they would say that China does a lot of Bitcoin mining and energy is cheap in China. And then the anti-Bitcoin people would say, yeah, but China still produces a load of environmentally bad stuff because of their excessive use of energy in maintaining the Bitcoin network. Ultimately, I don't know what the answer is. There are pros and cons. Everything kind of uses energy. People say Bitcoin is bad because it uses more energy than it should. I don't know. I'm just, don't shoot the messenger. That is just one of the reasons as to why people think Bitcoin is a bit controversial. Thirdly, Bitcoin is controversial because people are sometimes worried about security issues. Now, theoretically, the whole system is sort of decentralized and trustless and maintained by these millions of nodes all around the world. In practice, there are these things called crypto exchanges. Now, these are big companies, sort of like the London Stock Exchange and the New York Stock Exchange. They're an exchange that connects buyers to sellers. And because a lot of people who have accounts on these exchanges also use the exchange to store their Bitcoin, like the exchange also stores Bitcoin for you, like I have all my Bitcoin in Coinbase. If Coinbase were to get hacked for whatever reason, then I might lose my Bitcoin. And in the past kind of decade, there have been quite a few high-profile hacking instances where the exchange has been targeted and users have lost their crypto. In practice, this is not something that I am personally particularly worried about. If you're worried about it, you can do lots and lots of other things to secure your Bitcoin, like use a hardware wallet. There's loads of YouTube videos explaining that, kind of outside the scope of this one, but security issues is reason number 3 why Bitcoin's controversial. And reason number 4 is the fact that Bitcoin is sometimes used as a form of payment for illegal activities. Like, let's say you want to buy drugs or you want to buy bad things on the dark web or whatever that means. You can pay in Bitcoin and you can receive Bitcoin, and theoretically your Bitcoin username is like a random string of letters and numbers that is not directly tied to you as an individual. And therefore, Bitcoin is a way that unscrupulous people across the internet can facilitate payments without needing to verify their identity with anyone. In fairness, people can also do illegal things with US dollars and every other form of currency in the world. But people would say, like the anti-Bitcoin people would say, Bitcoin is bad because it's fundamentally anonymous, and therefore you never know who the actual person is on the other end unless you kind of trust them initially. And therefore, because this even more facilitates the use of illegal activities, this is therefore bad. I don't buy that argument personally. I mean, the internet itself can be a good or bad thing depending on the context in which it's used. I personally think Bitcoin could be the future and it is broadly a good thing, but of course it could be a bad thing depending on how it's used. And so that brings us on to section 3. Having said all of that about the potential issues with Bitcoin, why do I personally invest in it? And again, let's break this down into 4 parts. Number 1 is FOMO, number 2, gambling, number 3, fun, and number 4, diversification. So firstly, I've got to be honest, the primary reason I invest in crypto is because I have a fear of missing out. Like, I first heard about Bitcoin in 2011, like everyone else did. And then I'm thinking, damn, if only I'd bought Bitcoin in 2011, I'd be a multimillionaire by now and I'd never have to work a day in my life. And then for me, like every few years, I'd hear about Bitcoin and be like, oh, it's Bitcoin's now $100. But, if only I'd invested 2 years ago. Oh, but I can't possibly get it now because it's $100 and that's way too expensive. If I'd gotten at $100, Bitcoin is now worth $50,000. Therefore, I would have made a lot of money. But it's this sense of fear of missing out, which is why I personally do invest in crypto. Secondly, crypto feels like a socially acceptable form of gambling. I don't really consider it an investment in a way. I consider it gambling, and I'm not a fan of gambling normally, but it's kind of fun to gamble on Bitcoin. And in fact, in 2017, the last time Bitcoin had like a real heyday, I'd put in about 60,000 pounds of my own money into Bitcoin, and I was plus 40K at one point. Like my portfolio was worth 100 grand, and I'd only put in 60 grand, so I'd made 40,000 in the space of a few weeks. And that was like a very addictive feeling because it was like within the space of a few weeks, I've made more money than I would have made in a whole year as working as a doctor. Then I subsequently lost lots of money in the December 2017 crash, and I ended up with like negative 35,000 or something like that. And so that's a bit of a cautionary tale, but ultimately I do consider it a form of gambling that I'm happy to engage in with some amount of my money. Thirdly, it's just kind of fun. It's fun to be a part of the future. It's fun to keep up to the news, like with the news about Bitcoin. It's fun to look at the portfolio occasionally and be like, oh, are we up? Are we down? How are things going? And it's fun to feel as if, to feel like part of this like revolution. And I genuinely do think that Bitcoin could be the future of money, and I want to be a part of that. And that just feels kind of fun. And fourthly, if I do think of it as an investment, it's like I've got some percentage of my portfolio in crypto, and that theoretically helps me diversify more my portfolio, which is otherwise mostly in stocks and shares. And the way I think of it is that, like, this is not generally true, but like assuming crypto is not correlated with the broader US stock market, it means that if I invest in crypto, if I gamble my money on cryptocurrencies, it means that I hedge kind of the risk of stock market going down and losing money in that kind of way. Not really legit because I do consider it gambling and just like a bit of fun, but I'm throwing that in there to make this a list of 4. So what is my strategy for investing / gambling in crypto? Well, these days I have about 20% of my overall like investment portfolio in crypto in a combination of Bitcoin and Ethereum, mostly Ethereum because I actually bought loads of Ethereum like 4 years ago and just held on to it. So I think my allocation is about 80% Ethereum, 20% Bitcoin. 20% of my overall portfolio in crypto is quite a high number. Someone like Graham Stephan, who is far more pro at personal finance than I am and also has far more money than I do, has like 1 to 2% of his portfolio in crypto, as he talks about on his YouTube channel. I have 20% of mine in crypto, and that's quite a high allocation. Like, the main thing with crypto is that you only want to put in money that you can 100% afford to lose, because it's quite a high risk speculative investment. I don't think of it as an investment, I think of it as gambling. So it's like I'm gambling with 20% of my overall investment portfolio. That for me is a number that I'm happy with. Like, I am happy with, like, if tomorrow I lost that 20%, I wouldn't care in the slightest. I like to think it wouldn't affect my mental well-being at all. And I know this because when I lost £35,000 in 2017, which at the time was like half my net worth, it didn't affect me at all. So I've kind of been through that, losing large amounts of money and realizing, okay, this is not too bad. Therefore, I've sort of put my arbitrary risk profile that I'm happy with to be 20% of my portfolios in crypto. The other 80% of my portfolio is in stocks and shares, and that's sort of fairly standard, but 20% crypto, 80% stocks and shares. This is probably a bit too high. If I were talking to a friend, again, not financial advice, and you're not my friend, so I'm not giving you financial advice, purely for entertainment and informational purposes only, but if I were talking to a friend and they were like, hey, I want to put some money in crypto, I'd probably say that 20% is probably a bit high. Like, you probably don't want to run the risk of losing 20% of your money overnight if Bitcoin goes to zero. You might want it to start with maybe 2% or 3% or 5%, you know, something that you're a little bit more comfortable with than 20%. So if you do want to get started, firstly, you want to understand the underlying technology. So do that course over at Brilliant, you know, who are sponsoring this video, that cryptography course that helps you understand the underlying technology and helps you understand why this works and why I personally think it's legit. Secondly, there are 2 things you need. You need a wallet to store your cryptocurrency, and you need an exchange where you can buy and sell cryptocurrencies. Now, most big exchanges will also let you store currency on the platform. So I use Coinbase for everything. Please don't try and hack my Coinbase account. But I use Coinbase for everything. And so I have my Bitcoin and Ethereum stored in Coinbase itself. And I also use Coinbase as the exchange to buy and sell. Coinbase is one of the biggest ones in the world. There are a few others. You can always Google like best crypto exchange USA or best crypto exchange Pakistan or best crypto exchange UK. I personally use Coinbase. It's available in the UK. It's very nice and easy. No affiliation with them, no affiliate links or anything like that. But Coinbase, if you're watching this, reach out if you want to sponsor a video, lol. In practice, you do want to secure your account. So obviously on my Coinbase account, I have 2-factor authentication enabled. And if you really care about security, you can invest in something like a physical wallet, which is like a hardware wallet that stores your Bitcoin offline. Again, beyond the scope of this video to explain how that works, but that is like a much more secure way of storing your Bitcoin rather than having it stored on the internet in an exchange like Coinbase. So that was my beginner's introduction to crypto. This has been a far longer video than I thought it would be. If you're serious about investing, I recommend you don't start with crypto. I recommend instead you start with stocks and shares. And that video over there is my half an hour long introduction to how to invest in stocks and shares for beginners. I still have 80% plus of my portfolio in stocks and shares and only 20% of it in crypto. That's a really high number. For most friends, if I was talking to and not giving financial advice, I would recommend 95% stocks and shares and like 5% crypto. So definitely check that video out. Thanks for watching. Hope you found it useful, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.